Hi, and welcome back to the Positive Prepper. So, I know I haven't been on here for a while. We're trying to get my mom's cabin built, finished. So, when I'm not working, we're working on that. And then today, my husband and I went up and we saw our twin granddaughters that were born a week ago. So we had to spend some time with them and feed them some bottles and get some tummy time with them. It was awesome. So there's 4 things that I'm going to cover in this video. There's 4 things I'm going to cover in this video. So the first one is that all of our eyes are probably focused on the upcoming election. Okay, as it probably should be, right? Because it's a consequential election. And I'm going to get into a little bit more of that in a little bit, but what they're trying to take our eyes off of is the fact that we have 4 major global wars forming right now. And if you've been paying attention to the news, you understand these 4 global wars, but I'm going to cover them just real briefly. So the first one, of course, is China and Taiwan, and it will be the United States helping Taiwan versus China. China's been doing, they've been surrounding Taiwan, honestly, I think what China's waiting for, and this is just my opinion, I think what they're waiting for is to see who gets elected in November to decide whether they're going to strike or not. If one person gets elected, they're definitely going to strike. If the other person gets elected, they may want to rethink that. Just saying. So that's the first one. The second one is, of course, Ukraine and Russia. That's been ongoing for a while now. But it isn't just Ukraine and Russia anymore. It's Russia, North Korea, and China versus Ukraine, South Korea, and NATO allies, including the United States. Okay? So North Korea has sent troops to Russia to help fight on the eastern side of Ukraine. And now South Korea is saying, well, if you're letting North Korea do that with troops, then we're going to start sending stuff over to Ukraine to help fight that. And then, of course, NATO is stepping up their rhetoric about getting more involved in that war. And that includes the United States. And so that's number 2. Number 3, North Korea versus South Korea. So North Korea's, they're tearing up roads. They're making almost that line, right? That non-militarized zone. They're trying to make that so that anything beyond that is impassable. But what that means is that if North Korea decides to go to war with South Korea, the United States is going to help South Korea. So that's a third war. The fourth one, of course, is Israel versus Iran. And I think, honestly, depending on who gets in to office in November will determine the volume of which the United States is involved in that war. But now you have Iran and Saudi Arabia that are forming an alliance, and they want to start doing drills together. Israel, of course, is going to attack Iran at any point, when they're ready. And the United States at this point is pledging support for Israel. So we have 4 major global wars that could potentially, they're not yet, but could potentially But then, as I've said, we are already in World War III. But I guess what I mean is where the United States, you know, like we actually have boots on the ground. We're actually fighting it like we did in World War II, where we stormed Normandy, right? Went after Japan. But the lines are being drawn, I guess you could say, between what countries are going to be the allies and the Axis, right? Now, when I talk about the United States support for Israel, you know, that relationship is crumbling under this administration. You know, they talk out both sides of their mouth. They want, oh my gosh, we got to have a ceasefire. But we all know that if they do a ceasefire over there in, like, Gaza, that just gives Hezbollah and the Iranians more time to fortify their defensive and offensive people and operations. So I don't think that that's a good idea. Do I want to see any, you know, these children that are living through this? I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that anywhere. I don't care what country you're in. I don't want to see that. The reality of war, however, is that there are always these civilian populations, especially in Gaza, because they're being used as human shields, where these children are like they don't have a choice. And unfortunately, there are always casualties of war that should never be. But we can't stop that. But do we want to see the Jewish people treated the way that they've been treated, even here in the United States? I don't know that we want that to happen. But what you have to watch for in this upcoming conflict between Iran and Israel is the destruction of Damascus, which has one of the Iranian nuclear, I don't remember what they do there, but if Israel decides to strike there and wipe Damascus off the map, this is biblical. So that is something to look for, to pay attention to. All of our eyes are on the election, guys. That's what they want us to stay focused on. They want us to stay focused on who's higher in the polls. You know, Trump did this great thing at McDonald's, and oh my gosh, that was just a photo op. And I am so done with all the commercials, as I'm sure you are. But the point is, we have 4 major global wars that they're already happening, but they could expand exponentially in a short amount of time if certain decisions are made. So you need to pay attention to that, okay? Now, how does this affect the United States? Well, if you listened to my description of the 4 global wars, the United States is involved in every single one. And who does that leave to defend the United States? So, you know, we went through this. Everybody's got to leave the military if you're not going to get the life jacket, right? And then they recruited all of these people with, you know, no gender identity. Are they strong enough to protect you? Do you feel protected under this current military? Are there good people? Absolutely. Absolutely. I personally have family and friends in the military. But overall, if we are stretched out to these 4 other wars, who are they leaving behind to protect us? So are you prepared for that? Are you prepared for a war on this soil? Are you prepared for a draft? What does that look like for your family? If your loved ones get drafted in to be sent over into one of these wars, what does that look like for your family, and how are you prepared for that? Okay? How are you prepared for war here on American soil? Remember that we have a state on the far west, in the far west, California, that doesn't appear to be very strong. So that would be a perfect gateway for people that want to do the American people harm. Not to mention the fact that there are a lot of those people already in and dispersed by design across the United States. That our taxpayer money went to these NGOs that help these people come in, that are probably plotting a lot of these inside things. We're going to implode from the inside. So that's actually 5, I guess, global wars. Are you prepared for that? What does that look like to you? What do you envision that to look like, and then how are you preparing for that? Okay? The second thing I want to talk about is, okay, so along with these wars, you all have probably heard by now about the leaked documents that came from Israel. My understanding is it was like 2 pages. It was very generalized. But they came from someone within the intelligence community. And I have said before, and I'm not shy about saying it, although I have to use the words "in my opinion." Filters, right? In my opinion, the CIA probably has a lot to do with that. Because they have had their fingers in just about everything that's ever happened in U.S. history since they came about. Okay? So it would not surprise me if someone from that agency leaked these documents. You know, thankfully they didn't have like specific targets that Israel was going to use against Iran, but it was enough to show like Israel's moving, you know, property from certain areas to protect them when they go after Iran. So, are we ever going to find out the truth about that? Probably not, like we don't anything else. But in my opinion, I think the CIA probably leaked it, because that's what they tend to do. They want to get everybody ramped up, right? Get everybody just ramped up and scared and fear. That's what they're trying to do with this whole election. So talking about the election. So my nephew, who I love dearly, brought this to my attention. And it's not a paper that I would typically get. But y'all know I'm from Wisconsin. And this was in the Wisconsin Outdoors paper. Okay? It's not like a magazine. It's more like a newspaper. But it's called Wisconsin Outdoors. And there was an article in there, I think it was a few months ago, how the Wisconsin election for this cycle, for November 5th, 2024, will actually be unverifiable. Why is that? Well, here's the reason. There are 4.6 million adults. As of the writing of this article, there were 4.6 million adults, eligible voters in Wisconsin. But on the voter registration list, there are 7.5 million. Okay? Do you see the discrepancy there? So 7.5 million total on the voter registration list in Wisconsin, but there are only 4.6 million registered adults able to vote. So what is that? 2.9 million ineligible voters. And I want to bring you back to 2020, where there were a lot of people that were bringing up the fact that in specific counties and specific states, there were more votes coming in than there were eligible voters. We are seeing that again today. So this was brought to the attention of Voss, and he has been very public about he does not want Trump to win. But he can pretend that it's legitimate. This was brought to Voss's attention, but they're going to ignore it, and they're going to pretend that it's legitimate, even though it actually makes the Wisconsin election unverifiable. Now, I'm going to say this, and please don't send me hate email for this, but I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you have almost 3 million people on your voter registration that don't exist because either they've passed away or they moved away, this should have all been taken care of back in 2020, because there were all these questions about eligibility and verifiability, right? And eligibility. So they could have taken all of the year, let's say 2021. Wisconsin could have went through all of their voter registrations. And they can easily look up who's passed away, who's moved away, who are no longer Wisconsin residents. They could have black-lined, just went through and black-lined, right, the whole year. They chose to ignore it. So we have almost 3 million ineligible voters on our voter registration. So what does that do? Now you also have, I just forgot where they are actually allowing illegal immigrants on the voter registration, because now with it being this close to the election, it's illegal for them to take them off the voter registration. So we're going to let illegal immigrants vote in an election that constitutionally they cannot vote in. So y'all need to be going out there, whatever state you're from, you need to be going in and checking the number of registered voters, right, versus the number of actual eligible adults to vote. How many people over the age of 18 do you actually have in your state? And look at the discrepancy. And then if you're in a state with high numbers of illegal immigrants, you have to ask the question, how many of those are being allowed to vote in this election? And if you don't start raising your voices, guys, this may very well be the last election we have. Okay? So I thank my nephew greatly for bringing this to my attention. It was something I had not paid attention to. But when he showed me that, the actual article from this paper, I was like, that's insane. How many other states is that happening in? Right? Check it out, people. You need to make your voices heard. The last thing, well, not quite the last thing, the second to the last thing. So did you guys see the clip where, so these two 20-year-old boys from the University of La Crosse, and they were at a Kamala event, which was in the gymnasium at the university, and she was talking about abortion. Like, everybody should just have availability. And one of these 20-year-old young men shouted out, "Jesus is Lord." And Kamala's response to that was, "You're at the wrong rally. You need to go to the other smaller rally down the street," referring obviously to Trump's. So since when is a Christian belief solely a Republican belief? I get the morality perspective of it, right? Because there's a lot of conservative Christians. But since when is declaring that Jesus is Lord specific to one group? Because, folks, if that's who she is when she says you're at the wrong rally, think about what she's going to do if she were to get elected against all Christians, all people that speak out for their faith. So these two young men, they were on Fox this morning, and they were interviewed, and, you know, they talked about what led up to this and everything like that. And basically what they were, it wasn't even a political statement, it was a morality statement. Like, how can you believe in abortion? Like, and you guys know this about me, I am very pro-life. But I do believe there are circumstances that, you know, rape, incest, you know, mom's going to pass away, babies are going to, you know what I'm saying? I get that there are extenuating circumstances. And I understand that. And that's why God gives us our free will. Because there are times when we have to make decisions. And I understand that. But the overall biblical perspective is that you do not deny these children the availability to Christ. And if you are murdering them and not allowing them to be born, they don't get a say in that. That's taking children away from God. Okay? So that's kind of what these two young men, God bless them, her true colors showed very vividly when they said that. It was about morality. It wasn't about politics. So if you are a Christian conservative, or even if you are a Christian and not a conservative, let's say that you're a Christian Democrat, at this point, that's kind of an oxymoron, in my opinion. But if you are a Christian conservative, she showed her true colors that day. If you stand behind your conviction that there is a God, that Jesus is the Lord and Jesus is the King, and you get sent to a different place because you're in the wrong place, there's never a wrong place to declare that Jesus is Lord. So, do you want somebody like that in the highest office to be able to say, "Oh, you people can't be here. You're in the wrong place"? See, we're going to allow all of these immigrants, these illegals in here, which they're not all bad people, right? They're not all bad, but a lot of them are. You know, Venezuelan gangs, for example. So she would rather tell Christians you are in the wrong place than tell illegals that they are in the wrong place. That's really hard for me to digest. My last point. No matter who wins this election, Trump, Kamala, things will not get better. Okay? It's not the other side we are fighting. It is Satan and his little honeybee workers that are out there doing these things globally. Okay, Satan isn't just in the United States trying to screw things up. He's all over the globe trying to screw things up. He's trying to make sure that the children of God in Israel are wiped off the map. He's trying to make sure that these innocent children are being killed through the guise of war. He's working hard to make sure that women abort their babies as a means of birth control rather than having the moral values of not having sex outside of marriage. Or if you're having sex outside of marriage, having a way to protect from getting pregnant. It's the morality of it. Okay? It's allowing all of these transgender, allowing biological men in women's sports, allowing biological men in women's locker rooms. Have you ever heard of that reversed? Have you ever heard of that reversed? Biological women going into men's locker rooms? I'm sure the men would love that. And I don't take offense to that, but I'm being real about that. Are you hearing about biological women competing in men's sports? There might be 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, maybe. But women, biological women, know that they cannot compete against men. That's why you don't hear about it. It's always the reverse. And then you have Kamala going out there and saying, oh, I want to protect women's rights. Well, if you want to protect women's rights, you protect them in the locker room, you protect them in sports, right? And when you say my body, my choice, that better mean for jabs, right? And it better mean for self-defense. As a woman, I better be able to protect myself. My body, my choice. So if you come at me and I shoot you, that's a good thing. Because I'm protecting me, right? My body, my choice. Just saying. We are in a war between good and evil. And it's coming out, it's oozing out of every pore of not just us as Americans, but globally. And you guys need to pay attention to that. You need to be ready for it. Are you ready to stand up for your values and your morals? Are you prepared for war on American soil? Are you prepared to have your loved ones drafted to go fight these 4 wars, plus the one that could happen here? Are you ready for that? Are you checking in with your state voting registration to make sure that the number of voters on your registration match the numbers of people who are actually of voting age in your state? So those are things that I wanted to get out tonight. I'm sorry this was more of a rant. No, I'm not sorry. It needed to be said. So I want to hear your comments and thoughts below. You guys, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. You guys are really quiet out there. Tell me if you think I'm wrong on any of this. Tell me if you think you agree. Tell me what you've noticed, what you've seen, what you know about. Talk to each other about readiness, because we have to work as a community to be prepared. So hit that like button, please. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And as always, stay safe, stay vigilant, and God bless.